Great, we'll get started. Thank you for joining us. My name is Heather Grondin. I'm the Vice President of Communications and Stakeholder Relations for the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority. We're here today to provide you with an overview of the activities that we're currently undertaking. Oh, I'll just stop for a second. Can everyone hear me okay? Yep. Okay, great. Thank you. So just to go over that again, so we're here today to give an overview of the activities that are currently underway and to give you an overview of the public-private partnership or P3 model and process that we're currently undertaking to identify our private sector partner. Our presentation today will be divided into 5 sections. The WDBA and our partners, components of the project, activities taking place in Canada, activities taking place in the US, our project procurement process, and opportunities for continued engagement and consultation. This presentation and all of the boards that you're seeing today will be available on our website, wdbridge.com, in about a week. So first of all, who is the WDBA? The Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority was created in October 2012 with staffing and operations beginning in August 2014. It's a not-for-profit Canadian Crown corporation, and our mandate is to oversee and manage the procurement process for the design, construction, financing, operations, and maintenance of the new bridge between Windsor and Detroit through a public-private partnership or a P3. The Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority is led by our President and CEO, Mr. Michael Cotillo, and we're governed by a board of directors. I'll also mention our International Authority, which is a joint Canada and Michigan governance entity, which was established to oversee and approve key steps in the P3 procurement process for the new bridge. It's also responsible for monitoring our compliance with the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority with the crossing agreement that was signed by Canada and Michigan. The Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority works in close coordination with various partners and stakeholders. This is just a short list, and it includes Transport Canada, the Department of Infrastructure and Communities, the U.S. Federal Highway Administration, the Michigan Department of Transportation, Canada Border Services Agency, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the U.S. General Services Administration, and the cities of Windsor and Detroit. The process has been a long one to get us to where we are today. A number of key milestones have been reached along the way. In 2000, the Border Transportation Partnership, which was made up of Canada, Michigan, Ontario, and the US, was formed, and they conducted a cross-border traffic study between 2002 and 2003. A planning need and feasibility study was carried out by the partnership. The purpose of this study was to establish a 30-year strategy for the transportation network in southeastern Michigan and southwestern Ontario. Between 2005 and 2008, the Detroit River International Crossing Study, or DRIC study, took place. This was a coordinated bi-national process that met the requirements of the Ontario Environmental Assessment Act, the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act, and the U.S. National Environmental Policy Act. In 2008, a new border transportation system for the Windsor-Detroit Gateway was identified. It included 5 components: an Ontario access road, which is now known as the Right Honourable Herb Gray Parkway, a Canadian port of entry, a river crossing, now known as the Gordie Howe International Bridge, a U.S. port of entry, and an interchange to Interstate 75. The new border transportation system addresses 4 regional transportation needs. It provides redundancy, it provides improved border processing capacity and capabilities, and it provides an improved system connectivity. All approvals of the study were received in 2009. Further approvals were secured, including the crossing agreement signed in 2012 by Canada and Michigan, the U.S. State Department's 2013 issuance of the presidential permit, and the U.S. Coast Guard's bridge permit issued in 2014. As previously mentioned, the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority was incorporated in 2012. The Board of Directors, members of the International Authority, and the President and CEO were appointed in 2014. That brings us to 2015, and I will speak to in more detail about the achievements of 2015 shortly. Background information that I just shared can be found on our project website, wdbridge.com, and also the website that was established during the DRIC study, Partnership Border Study, is still active, and this information can be found there as well. Moving on to the components of the project, there are 4 main components to the Gordie Howe International Bridge project. First, the bridge itself. Second, the Canadian Port of Entry. Third, the U.S. Port of Entry. And fourth, the Michigan interchange to I-75. Regarding the bridge, there are two design types that could be used for the signature bridge. The suspension, which is recognized by its elongated M shape, or cable stayed, which has more of an A shape. The bridge has 6 lanes, 3 Canadian bound and 3 US bound, and has a clear span of 850 meters with no piers in the water. There are 2 approach bridges, one on each side of the crossing, so in total, the approximate length of the bridge is 2.5 kilometers. Once completed, this bridge will be among the top 5 longest bridges in North America. The Canadian Port of Entry is an approximate 53-hectare site. It includes inbound border inspection facilities for both passenger and commercial vehicles, outbound inspection facilities, toll collection facilities, a maintenance facility, and parking. The footprint of the Port of Entry allows for the installation of further technology and the addition of expanded border processing facilities. The U.S. Port of Entry is an approximate 60-hectare site. It includes U.S. inbound border inspection facilities for both passenger and commercial vehicles, U.S. outbound inspection facilities, commercial exit control booths, and parking. The Michigan interchange to Interstate 75 consists of primary connecting ramps to and from the U.S. Port of Entry and associated local road improvements that will be required due to the project. These include 3 kilometers of I-75 and interchange ramps, 4 new crossing road bridges, 4 new pedestrian bridges, 4 long bridges crossing the railway and connecting to I-75 and to the U.S. Plaza. Also, key intersections will be widened to allow transport trucks to make full uninterrupted turns. Regarding activities currently undergoing in Canada, on June 4th, 2015, the WDVA announced that it had issued a request for tender for the construction of a perimeter access road, the relocation of utilities, and the placement of fill at the site of the Canadian Port of Entry for the new bridge. Known as early works, the completion of these activities is required to prepare the Canadian Port of Entry for work to be undertaken by our future private sector partner. Having these activities completed prior to work started under the P3 process will help achieve our broader timelines for the project. So just to give you a sense of scale of early works, here's some interesting stats. More than 4.5 kilometers of exclusion fencing has been installed around the site. This is a special fence made out of geotextile fabric, and it serves to keep not only wildlife and the public out of the site, but it also serves to keep eastern fox snake, a climbing snake, and unidentified species at risk out of the construction site. About 13 kilometers of utilities have been removed. 90,000 cubic meters of topsoil has been removed. That's about 8,000 truckloads. It has taken 30 ships to deliver the aggregate that will be needed to grade the site. 42,000 wick drains will be installed to ensure the site drains properly. And 1 million tons of fill will be used for that site. Now, if you were to take all this fill, it could fill the entire Rogers Centre in Toronto. One other activity that's ongoing is property acquisition. Transport Canada is the lead for Canadian property acquisition, and those discussions are ongoing. In regards to activities in the U.S., the Delray community, where the U.S. Port of Entry will be built, has a rich history hosting several historic sites. Current activities include documenting and recording information on Kovacs Bar and the St. Paul AME Church. In addition to that work, U.S. utility relocation is also ongoing. The WDBA is working with utilities and other partner agencies to identify high priority areas where utilities require relocation. Relocation designs and schedules have commenced with a number of stakeholder groups, including DTE Energy, International Transmission Corporation, and Detroit Water and Sewage Department. Other companies have also begun or completed their relocation work. These include Sprint, Nextel, and AT&T. Also ongoing is acquisition of U.S. property. The Michigan Department of Transportation is leading that work, and they are having one-on-one discussions with property owners as needed. So on to the P3 procurement process. So what is P3? The P3 stands for a public-private partnership. It's a cooperative venture between a public sector entity, which in this case is the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, and the private sector partner for the provision of infrastructure or services. The partnership is built on the expertise of each partner that best meets clearly defined public needs. The Gordie Howe International Bridge will be designed, built, financed, operated, and maintained using a P3 model, which will be overseen by the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority. So there are many benefits to using a P3 model. The model allows for the appropriate sharing of risks between the government and the private sector. Also, a whole life approach is taken in the delivery, with the private sector having the responsibility for the design and delivery of the project, but also long-term operations and maintenance. The private sector's expertise, efficiencies, and innovation are utilized when delivering a large-scale infrastructure, and the private sector is paid only on performance, aligning financial incentives for on-time and on-budget delivery. So how will the procurement process work to identify our private sector partner? As per P3 best practices, the WDBA will use a two-stage approach. The first stage is the request for qualifications stage, and this started when we issued the request for qualifications on July 20th, 2015. Respondents must demonstrate their ability to successfully deliver a project of this scale. Following careful evaluation, the stage concludes with up to 3 respondent teams being invited to move to the next procurement stage. The WDBA is currently in the middle of this stage of the procurement process. In terms of highlights, as I mentioned, the request for qualifications was issued on July 20th. Industry events were held to support the launch and provide information to potential respondents on the project. The response was positive, with hundreds of people and companies on both sides of the border attending the events. The RFQ closed on October 9th, and 6 North American and international respondents teams submitted responses. These responses are now being carefully evaluated by the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority and our partners, and all work is being undertaken under an independent third-party fairness monitor. This helps us to make sure the process is fair, open, and transparent. This photo here just shows a few of the numerous boxes that were hand-delivered to our offices in response to the deadline. Process. This is called the request for proposals, or RFP stage. There are 4 key milestones in the second stage. First, invited respondents or proponents are asked to respond to the request for proposals, and they start preparing their responses or their proposals. During this time, the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority will work closely with the proponents, communicating the design, construction, operation, and maintenance requirements of the project, responding to requests for information, and holding meetings with them. After months of preparation, the proponents will submit their proposals to the WDBA. The proposals will be evaluated by a team comprised of WDBA officials, partner organizations, and experts according to a set criteria. The evaluation leads to the third milestone, the identification of the preferred proponent. This is the team whose proposal best meets the criteria set out in the request for proposals. At that point, contractual negotiations begin. The fourth and final milestone, financial close, is when all negotiations are complete, financing is in place, and the contract between the WDBA and the successful private sector partner is signed. As I've mentioned, the entire P3 procurement process is overseen by a fairness monitor, acting as an objective third-party observer, ensuring the process is conducted in a fair, open, and transparent way. It is anticipated that the length of the procurement process for the WDBA will be about 18 months, and in accordance with the 2012 crossing agreement that I mentioned earlier, the WDBA must present to the International Authority the RFQ, the RFP, and the agreement between ourselves and the successful proponent for approval. So this chart here illustrates what the private sector partner will ultimately be responsible for. The private sector partner will be responsible for the design, construction, financing, operation, maintenance, and maintenance rehabilitation and handover requirements for the bridge, the Canadian port of entry, including the tolling infrastructure, and the U.S. port of entry. They will also be responsible for the design, construction, and financing of the Michigan interchange. The Michigan Department of Transportation will be responsible for the operations, maintenance, and maintenance rehabilitation of the Michigan interchange. Also of note, the Canada Border Services Agency will operate the Canadian port of entry, and the U.S. Customs and Border Protection will operate the U.S. port of entry. These organizations will carry out customs inspections and other border-related functions. Our project company, or the successful proponent, will be responsible for custodial functions and other building-related operations and maintenance. So in terms of local and economic opportunities, local contractors provide many benefits to international teams who will be bidding on this project. The international teams rely on the proven experience of local contractors in area construction projects. They rely on the knowledge of local conditions. They rely on their experience with the local labor pool, and it's a benefit for them not to have to provide travel and accommodation expenses for out-of-town workers. So the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority has engaged a number of key advisors and consultants to help us carry out the P3 procurement process. Here's an overview of some of those consultants and key advisors. They include a general engineering consultant, a P3 financial and transaction advisor, a capital markets advisor, P3 legal advisors, and as I mentioned, a P3 fairness monitor. We're also taking advantage of public sector best practices by working closely with Public Works and Government Services Canada. So representatives from a number of these organizations are here with us today, and they're available to answer any of your questions following the presentation. So in terms of ongoing engagement and consultation, the Detroit River International Crossing Study, as I mentioned, was a coordinated study. Both Canada and the US committed to future communication and consultation with the public, Indigenous people, regulatory agencies, and other stakeholders on various topics throughout the construction and operation of the bridge. These commitments will be completed by the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority at appropriate times during the design, build, and maintenance of the bridge. On the next slide, and I won't read this over, there is a panel with this information. These are some of the Canadian requirements that are documented in the Canadian Rescreening Report that future consultation and engagement will be focused on. Same with the next slide. These are commitments on the US side that are documented in the Environmental Impact Statement, the Green Sheet, and the Memorandum of Understanding that will be topics of conversation for future consultation. Now, a topic related to the bridge in this project that always gains a lot of interest and questions is aesthetics. Aesthetics was talked about at some length during the DRIC study, and we will be continuing the work carried out during the DRIC study. There's a number of themes that were discussed as part of the DRIC study that the community identified as themes that they would like to see represented in the design of the bridge and the plazas. These included historic, friendship, gateway, modern, and native vegetation. We commit to doing ongoing consultation and engagement related to aesthetics for the bridge components. So there's many opportunities where aesthetics will be able to be applied. Here are just some of those examples: the main bridge, approaches and ramps, the I-75 overpass, pedestrian bridges, lighting, and the US Port of Entry and Canadian Port of Entry buildings and landscapes. Finally, one of the most exciting aspects of this project is the inclusion of community benefits as a key deliverable by the private sector partner. This community benefits will be delivered under close oversight and engagement with the WDBA. The benefits are defined as a long-term plan of action that engages the host communities of Windsor and Delray, plus the surrounding regions of Windsor and Essex County and Greater Detroit. The Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority has been working and will continue to work with key stakeholder groups to help identify opportunities that may be included in this program. So to sum it up, thank you all for coming today. This has been an amazing turnout for this first presentation. We encourage you to stay connected with us at the WDBA. Our project website is wdbridge.com. We're on social media: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. You can come by and visit us in our offices, give us a call, or send us an email. When everyone came in today, you were given a package with fact sheets and comment sheets. I'd encourage you to fill out your comment sheets, hand them in to us before you leave. We're interested in what you have to say and any feedback that you have for us. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a number of folks, anyone with a name tag would be happy to hear your questions. If we can't answer your questions today, we'll jot them down, we'll jot down your contact information, and we will get back to you with information. Thank you.